Imagine walking into a beautiful house that promises safety, money, and a fresh start, only to realize, slowly and painfully, that the walls are watching you, the smiles are lying to you, and the job you thought would save your life might actually destroy it. Now ask yourself this: how far would you go to escape your past? And how much would you ignore just to survive? That question sits at the very heart of The Housemaid by Freida McFadden. This is not just a thriller. It is a psychological mirror held up to anyone who has ever been desperate, broke, ashamed of their past, or willing to stay silent just to have a roof over their head. It is a story about power, manipulation, class, trauma, and the terrifying truth that sometimes the most dangerous monsters are not hiding in the dark. They are smiling right in front of us. As you listen to this narration, I want you to imagine yourself in the main character's position. Imagine needing money so badly that you accept a job without asking too many questions. Imagine telling yourself that strange behavior is normal, that red flags are just misunderstandings, and that staying quiet is safer than speaking up. This story matters today because millions of people are living exactly like that, trapped in toxic workplaces, abusive homes, and unequal power dynamics, telling themselves they have no other choice. And by the time this story ends, you will not only understand what happens inside that house, you will understand something deeply uncomfortable about human nature, about control, and about what survival can turn us into. Freida McFadden, the author of The Housemaid, is known for writing psychological thrillers that feel disturbingly real. What makes her work so powerful is that she understands the human mind from the inside. She is a practicing physician, someone who has spent years listening to people's fears, secrets, and broken thoughts. She knows how people lie, how they justify their actions, and how trauma reshapes behavior. That medical and psychological background bleeds into her writing, making her characters feel less like fictional creations and more like people you might actually know. McFadden often explores what happens when vulnerable people collide with power, when wealth meets desperation, when charm hides cruelty, and when society looks the other way because everything appears perfect on the surface. In The Housemaid, she takes a simple setup and turns it into a slow-burning psychological nightmare, one that feels uncomfortably plausible in the modern world. Now let's step inside the story itself. The story begins with Millie. Millie is not living a glamorous life. She is broke, homeless, and carrying a past she cannot escape. She sleeps in her car, showers wherever she can, and lives with the constant fear that one wrong move could land her back in prison. Her criminal record follows her like a shadow, closing doors before she even has a chance to knock. Employers don't want to hear explanations. Landlords don't care about second chances. Society has already decided who she is. Millie is exhausted from surviving. So when she sees an ad for a live-in housemaid position, it feels like a miracle. Free room, free food, a steady paycheck, a chance to start over. The job is in a beautiful house, owned by a wealthy family, the Winchesters. From the outside, everything looks perfect. The house is large, clean, and elegant, the kind of place that feels like safety. Nina Winchester, the woman of the house, is beautiful, stylish, and immediately unsettling. At first, she seems friendly, even generous. But there's something off about her. Her moods shift without warning. One moment she's warm and appreciative. The next she's cruel, humiliating, and explosive. She makes messes deliberately, then screams at Millie for not cleaning them fast enough. She insults her, belittles her, and tests her boundaries constantly. Millie tells herself she can handle it. She has handled worse. Her husband, Andrew Winchester, is the opposite of Nina. He is calm, kind, soft-spoken, and polite. He thanks Millie for her work. He apologizes for his wife's behavior. He looks at Millie not as a servant, but as a human being. And that kindness matters more than it should, especially to someone who has been treated like nothing for so long. Then there's their daughter, a quiet child who seems withdrawn and scared. She rarely speaks, rarely smiles, and avoids her mother whenever possible. The house, despite its beauty, feels tense, like everyone is holding their breath. Millie moves into her room, which is small and located in the attic. It locks from the outside. That detail lingers, even though she brushes it off. She tells herself it's for privacy, or safety, or maybe she doesn't want to think too deeply about it, because she needs this job too much. And this is where the psychological trap begins. The brilliance of this story lies in how slowly the danger reveals itself. Nothing dramatic happens at first. No immediate violence. No obvious crime. Just discomfort, unease, emotional instability. And that's exactly how real-life abuse often works. It doesn't start with fists. It starts with confusion, with self-doubt, with someone making you question your own perceptions. Nina begins to escalate her behavior. She accuses Millie of things she didn't do. She lies to her husband about Millie's mistakes. She punishes her in small, cruel ways. She forces her to redo tasks unnecessarily. She invades her privacy. And every time Millie considers leaving, she remembers her car, her past, and the reality waiting for her outside those walls. So she stays. This is a powerful commentary on how poverty and desperation trap people in abusive situations. Millie isn't weak. She's strategic. She's surviving. But survival often requires swallowing injustice, and that comes at a cost. At the same time, Andrew's kindness grows more significant. He listens. He sympathizes. He makes Millie feel seen. And slowly, dangerously, she begins to trust him. That trust becomes emotional dependence. And emotional dependence is fertile ground for manipulation. As the days pass, strange things happen. Nina's accusations become more severe. The house feels more like a cage. The locked attic door feels less like a coincidence. And Millie begins to suspect that something deeper is wrong with Nina. Maybe she's mentally ill. Maybe she's abusive to her husband and child. Maybe Millie is witnessing a domestic nightmare from the inside. The reader, like Millie, is led to believe that Nina is the villain. But this story is not that simple. And this is where Freida McFadden does something masterful. She uses perspective, assumptions, and sympathy to guide the reader into a false sense of understanding. We think we know what's happening. We think we've identified the monster. But the truth is far more disturbing. As the tension builds, Millie uncovers disturbing details about Nina's past, about her behavior, about things that don't add up. And just when the situation seems unbearable, just when Millie believes she has finally understood the danger she's in, the story flips. The truth is revealed in a way that forces you to reevaluate everything you thought you knew. Nina is not the monster. Nina is a victim. Andrew Winchester, the kind, gentle, soft-spoken husband, is the true predator. And suddenly, every small detail clicks into place. Nina's erratic behavior was not madness. It was fear. It was desperation. It was the behavior of someone trapped in an abusive relationship with a man who knows exactly how to present himself as the perfect husband to the outside world. Andrew is a master manipulator. He uses charm as a weapon. He uses calmness as camouflage. He gaslights Nina, controls her environment, isolates her, and makes sure no one would ever believe her if she spoke out. Millie wasn't hired by accident. She was chosen. Nina brought Millie into the house because she needed help. She needed an ally. Someone who could see through Andrew's mask. Someone with nothing to lose. Someone strong enough to survive what she couldn't handle alone. The cruelty Nina showed Millie was deliberate. It was designed to push Millie closer to Andrew, to make her see his true nature. Nina needed Millie to understand the danger from the inside, because no one else would listen. This revelation transforms the story from a simple thriller into a complex psychological study of abuse, perception, and survival. It forces us to confront how easily we believe appearances, how quickly we label women as crazy and men as kind, how society protects abusers who know how to perform goodness. From this point forward, the story becomes a tense game of strategy. Millie, now aware of the truth, must decide what kind of person she is going to be. A victim who escapes and saves herself, or a survivor who fights back. What follows is a chilling exploration of morality, of how trauma shapes decisions, of how far someone might go to stop a monster when the system has already failed. Millie's past, the one she's been running from, becomes relevant again. The things she did, the line she crossed, the capacity for darkness she carries inside herself. And the question becomes not just whether Andrew deserves punishment, but whether Millie is willing to become something dangerous to stop him. This is where the housemaid stops being comfortable, because it doesn't offer easy answers. It asks whether justice always looks clean, whether survival always looks moral, and whether sometimes the only way out of hell is through choices that haunt you forever. As the story races toward its conclusion, every character is revealed in full. Masks fall, secrets surface, and the house that once seemed like a sanctuary becomes a battleground of wills, intelligence, and fear. The ending is shocking, not because of cheap twists, but because of what it says about human nature, about how society fails victims, about how monsters hide in plain sight, and about how survival sometimes requires becoming something you never wanted to be. And as the final moments unfold, one truth becomes painfully clear. The housemaid was never just cleaning the house. She was cleaning up a lie. She was erasing a monster. She was rewriting her own story. Now pause for a moment and let this sink in. This book works so powerfully because it taps into real psychological principles. Abusers often present themselves as calm, reasonable, and generous. Victims often appear unstable, emotional, and difficult. Power imbalances distort reality. And when money, status, and charm are involved, the truth becomes invisible. People fail when they ignore their intuition, when they assume kindness equals goodness, when they judge situations based on appearances instead of patterns, when they silence themselves because speaking up feels risky. In modern life, these dynamics appear everywhere. In workplaces where bosses manipulate employees, in relationships where control is disguised as care, in families where silence is mistaken for peace. The lesson here is not just about spotting evil. It's about understanding how systems protect it. And the practical application of this story is deeply uncomfortable but essential. Pay attention to inconsistencies. Believe patterns, not performances. Don't dismiss someone's pain just because it's inconvenient. And most importantly, never underestimate your own strength just because your past is messy. Millie's transformation shows us that your past does not define your future, but it does shape your tools. Survival skills are not pretty. They are effective as we come toward the end of this journey. Remember this: the housemaid is not about a job. It's about power. It's about silence. And it's about what happens when someone finally decides that they will not be small anymore. If this story made you think, if it made you uncomfortable, if it made you see the world a little differently, then take a moment to reflect on where you might be ignoring red flags in your own life. And if you found value in this deep storytelling experience, support the universe of book by liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and sharing your biggest realization in the comments below. Because sometimes, the stories that disturb us the most are the ones we need to hear. Let's continue exactly where the emotional weight of the story truly deepens. Because what happens next is not just about plot twists, but about understanding the darkest corners of the human mind and what survival can force someone to become. Once Millie fully understands who Andrew really is, her entire perception of the house changes. The walls feel tighter. The air feels heavier. Every polite smile from Andrew now feels like a threat. Every calm sentence sounds rehearsed, calculated. She realizes something terrifying. Andrew isn't violent in obvious ways. He doesn't shout. He doesn't lose control. And that is precisely what makes him dangerous. Andrew represents a type of evil that thrives in modern society. The kind that hides behind manners, education, and social status. The kind that never leaves bruises where people can see them. He controls through subtlety, through psychological domination, through gaslighting so precise that his victims start doubting their own memories. Nina has been living inside that nightmare for years. Millie begins to understand why Nina acted the way she did, why she lashed out, why she appeared unstable. Nina wasn't crazy. She was being systematically broken. Every time she tried to assert herself, Andrew would twist the narrative. Every time she reacted emotionally, he would label her unhinged. Over time, Even Nina began to question her own reality. This is one of the most disturbing truths the book reveals. Abuse doesn't always look like violence. Sometimes it looks like quiet erosion, a slow dismantling of identity. And Millie, now fully awake to the truth, realizes she is standing at a crossroads. She can leave. She can walk away, save herself, and disappear again into the world. Or she can stay and help Nina end this nightmare once and for all. But staying means danger. Because Andrew is observant. He senses shifts in behavior. He notices when control starts slipping. And Millie knows that once a predator feels threatened, things escalate. What makes Millie different is her past. The past she has been hiding from everyone. The past that society refuses to forget. That past taught her how to survive in extreme situations. It taught her how to read people. It taught her how to lie when necessary. And most importantly, it taught her that sometimes doing the right thing means accepting consequences others will never understand. As Millie and Nina begin to quietly align, the tension becomes unbearable. Every interaction with Andrew is a performance. Every word is chosen carefully. Every movement is calculated. This is psychological chess, and one wrong move could cost someone their life. Andrew, meanwhile, continues to play his role flawlessly. He presents himself as the perfect husband to the outside world. Friends, doctors, neighbors, everyone believes him. Nina is the problem. Nina is unstable. Nina needs help. This reflects a painful reality many people live with. Society often sides with whoever looks calm, confident, and composed. We trust tone over truth. We believe presentation over pain. And that's why victims stay silent. The house itself becomes a symbol. It's large, beautiful, and suffocating. It looks safe from the outside, but inside, it's a prison. Even Millie's attic room, with its lock on the outside, takes on a darker meaning. Control is embedded into the structure of the house. Freedom is an illusion. As the story progresses, McFadden masterfully builds dread without relying on constant action. Instead, she uses anticipation. Silence. The fear of being watched. The fear of being found out. This mirrors how trauma feels in real life. Not explosive, but constant. Not loud, but relentless. Millie starts noticing how Andrew subtly tests boundaries. How he probes for weakness. How he adapts. He's not impulsive. He's strategic. And this makes the danger feel real. Because real abusers don't look like villains from movies. They look like people you trust with your children. The plan to escape Andrew's control is not simple. There is no easy exit. Nina can't just leave. Andrew controls the money. The narrative. The legal system would likely side with him. And Millie knows that reporting him could backfire catastrophically. So the question becomes, what does justice look like when the system is rigged? This is where the housemaid becomes morally complex. The story does not offer clean heroism. It forces the listener to sit with discomfort, to question their own sense of right and wrong. Millie reflects on her own past crime, on how one decision changed her entire life, on how society never stops punishing people who step outside the rules, even once. And she wonders whether stopping Andrew will mean crossing another line. But this time, it wouldn't be for survival alone. It would be to save someone else. The psychological depth here is powerful. Millie is not portrayed as a saint. She is flawed. She is capable of darkness. And that's what makes her real. The book suggests something unsettling. Sometimes, the people capable of stopping monsters are the ones who understand them. As the final act unfolds, the tension escalates sharply. Andrew begins to sense resistance. His control over Nina weakens. He becomes more watchful, more manipulative, but still calm, still polite, still believable. The danger feels imminent. And then, the story reaches its climax. Without spoiling the mechanics of every action, what matters most is the emotional truth of what happens next. Andrew underestimates Millie. He sees her as a servant, as disposable, as someone beneath him, and that arrogance becomes his downfall. The resolution is shocking not because of violence, but because of intention, because of choice, because of the quiet finality of it. When Andrew is finally removed from power, it doesn't feel triumphant. It feels heavy. It feels complicated. And that's intentional, because real justice is rarely satisfying. It leaves scars. Nina is free, but damaged. Millie survives, but changed. And the house, once a symbol of control, becomes empty, silent, neutral again. In the aftermath, Millie reflects on what she has done, on what she has become, and on what freedom actually costs. She doesn't romanticize her actions. She doesn't see herself as a hero. She simply accepts that survival sometimes demands decisions that don't fit neatly into moral boxes. This ending challenges the listener to confront uncomfortable questions. If someone is truly dangerous, and the system refuses to protect the victim, what is the ethical response? Who gets to decide? And at what point does an action become complicity? Psychologically, the book exposes how power operates. Power isn't always loud. It doesn't always threaten. Often, it whispers. It convinces. It reframes reality until victims blame themselves. And practically, the story offers profound lessons for modern life. Trust patterns, not words. Pay attention to who benefits from chaos. Notice who stays calm while others fall apart. Ask yourself who controls the narrative. Who has resources? Who is believed? In relationships, in workplaces, in families, manipulation thrives when silence is rewarded and discomfort is ignored. The book urges us to question appearances and listen to unease. For personal transformation, Millie's journey reminds us that your past does not erase your value. It may shape you, but it does not disqualify you from growth or purpose. However, it also warns that survival skills must be handled carefully. Power can corrupt anyone, even those who were once powerless. As we approach the final moments of this narration, let's return to the core message of The Housemaid. This is not just a thriller about a dangerous man or a twisted household. It is a story about visibility, about who is seen and who is ignored, about how easily society believes the wrong people. It is about how desperation makes us vulnerable, how kindness can be a mask, and how strength often looks nothing like we expect. If you take one lesson from this story, let it be this: never confuse calmness with goodness, and never assume chaos means guilt. Sometimes, the person everyone trusts is the one you should fear most. And sometimes, the person everyone dismisses is the one holding the truth. They're the ones that look perfect. Let's keep going, because there is still a deeper layer to this story that deserves to be unfolded slowly, thoughtfully, and honestly. What remains is not just about what happened inside that house, but about what lingers after, what follows Millie beyond the walls, and what this book ultimately teaches us about human nature, trauma, and transformation. After everything that unfolds, after Andrew's control is finally broken and the house is no longer a cage, silence takes over. And that silence is important, because trauma does not end the moment danger ends. Freedom is not an instant feeling of relief. Often, it arrives quietly, awkwardly, even painfully, because the body and mind have been trained to live in fear for so long. Millie walks away from the house, but she does not walk away unchanged. She carries the weight of what she did, the choices she made, the lines she crossed. Even though her actions stopped a monster, they still sit heavy on her conscience. This is something Freida McFadden handles with maturity and realism. The book does not glorify violence. It does not pretend that extreme actions come without psychological cost. Millie understands now that survival has layers. The first layer is escaping danger. The second is living with yourself afterward. And this is where the story becomes deeply human. Millie reflects on her life before the Winchesters, on the mistakes that led her to prison, on how one decision can define how the world sees you forever. She realizes that society is quick to label people as bad or broken, but rarely asks what shaped them, rarely asks what they survived. Her experience in the house forces her to confront a difficult truth. She is capable of terrible things, but she is also capable of empathy, courage, and sacrifice. Those two realities exist at the same time. This duality is one of the most powerful themes in The Housemaid. People are not one thing. Victims can become dangerous. Kind people can be cruel. Monsters can look gentle. And heroes can have blood on their hands. Nina's future, 2. Is uncertain. Freedom does not magically heal years of abuse. She must rebuild herself from fragments. Learn to trust her own thoughts again. Learn that her emotions are not weaknesses. Learn that survival does not make her crazy. The book subtly shows how abuse strips victims of confidence, independence, and identity. Nina must rediscover who she is without Andrew defining her. And that journey is long, quiet, and deeply personal. One of the most unsettling realizations the book leaves us with is how easily Andrew existed undetected. How many people like him are walking among us? How many homes look peaceful from the outside while hiding psychological warfare inside? This is not fiction exaggerating reality. This is reality reflected through fiction. From a psychological perspective, Andrew embodies narcissistic and psychopathic traits. He lacks empathy, but he understands emotions well enough to manipulate them. He studies reactions. He adapts. He mirrors what people want to see. And he relies on social structures, marriage, money, reputation, to shield himself. People like Andrew rarely get caught because they do not appear dangerous. They let others do the emotional work. They provoke reactions, then punish those reactions. They remain calm, so others look unstable. This is why The Housemaid resonates so strongly with readers. It validates experiences many people struggle to explain. It puts language to confusion. It confirms that sometimes what feels wrong truly is wrong, even if you can't prove it yet. The practical lesson here is not paranoia. It's awareness. In your own life, notice who always controls the story, who always appears reasonable while others are painted as emotional. Who benefits when someone is silenced? Who gains power when doubt is introduced? This applies not just to relationships, but to workplaces, friendships, families, and institutions. Maybe you've known someone like Andrew. Maybe you've felt dismissed like Nina. Maybe you've survived like Millie. Or maybe you've ignored red flags because it felt easier than confronting them. Wherever you see yourself in this story, let it remind you of this. Your perceptions matter. Your discomfort is information, and your past does not cancel your future. If The Housemaid has taught us anything, it's that the truth often lives in the margins, in the people society overlooks, in the voices that sound too emotional, in the stories that don't fit neatly into what we want to believe. And finally, remember this powerful truth. Survival is not weakness. It is intelligence. It is adaptability. It is strength forged under pressure. If you stayed with this story until now, thank yourself for listening deeply. Stories like this are not entertainment alone. They are warnings, mirrors, and sometimes guides. If this narration moved you, challenged you, or opened your eyes, show your support by liking this video, subscribing to the universe of book, and writing in the comments what lesson stayed with you the longest. Because the more we talk about these stories, the harder it becomes for monsters to hide. Let's continue, because there is still one final layer that deserves to be spoken out loud. The layer that turns The Housemaid from a dark psychological thriller into a lasting life lesson that stays with you long after the story ends. After everything that happened, after the danger passed, and the house was left behind, Millie does something most people don't expect. She doesn't celebrate. She doesn't feel victorious. Instead, she feels quiet, thoughtful, almost hollow. And that reaction is important because it reflects a truth many stories avoid. Surviving something horrific does not automatically make you feel whole. Trauma doesn't announce when it leaves. Millie understands now that she will never be the same person she was before that house. And that realization isn't tragic, it's honest. She has seen how fragile the illusion of safety really is. She has seen how easily power can twist reality. And once you see that, you can never fully unsee it. But there is also strength in that awareness. Millie walks forward carrying something new, clarity. She knows how manipulation works. She knows how charm can hide cruelty. She knows how silence can be weaponized. And she knows that she is no longer willing to be invisible. This is the quiet transformation at the heart of the book. Not a loud victory, not a heroic speech, just a woman who now understands her own power. One of the most haunting messages The Housemaid leaves us with is that danger often feels normal when you live inside it long enough. Nina's suffering became routine. Millie's humiliation became routine. Andrew's control became routine. And routine is what makes abuse so difficult to escape. When pain becomes familiar, we stop questioning it. That is why awareness is revolutionary. The moment Millie truly sees Andrew for who he is, the illusion collapses. And once an illusion collapses, it can never fully be rebuilt. That's why abusers work so hard to control perception. Because once their mask slips, their power weakens. The book subtly warns us about the cost of ignoring small discomforts. The locked attic door, the shifting moods, the lies that don't quite add up. None of these things alone scream danger. But together, they form a pattern. And patterns tell the truth long before words do. This is an incredibly important lesson for everyday life. People often wait for proof before trusting their instincts. But instincts exist because the mind recognizes patterns faster than logic can explain them. Discomfort is not paranoia. It is information. From a practical standpoint, this story teaches us to slow down and observe. To notice who is always calm during chaos, who always looks good while others fall apart, who controls resources, narratives, and outcomes, and who is quietly paying the price. It also teaches us something uncomfortable about morality. Millie does not emerge as a traditional hero. She emerges as a survivor who made impossible choices in an impossible situation. The book does not ask us to admire her actions blindly. It asks us to understand them. And understanding is harder than judgment. Because judgment is easy. Understanding requires empathy, nuance, and the willingness to sit with discomfort. Freida McFadden does not give us a story where good and evil are clearly separated. Instead, she gives us a world that looks much closer to real life, messy, unfair, and morally complicated. That is why this book resonates so strongly with readers. Because deep down, we know that life rarely offers clean endings. As the final emotional echo of the story settles, we're left with one powerful realization. Safety is not guaranteed by appearances. It is built through awareness, boundaries, and courage. And courage doesn't always look loud. Sometimes, it looks like staying alert. Sometimes, it looks like waiting. Sometimes, it looks like acting when no one else will. Millie's journey reminds us that our lowest moments do not erase our worth. That being desperate does not make you weak. And that survival itself is a form of intelligence. If you've ever felt trapped by your past, judged by your mistakes, or silenced by your circumstances, this story speaks directly to you. It says, you are not finished. You are not powerless. And you are not invisible. And if you've ever dismissed someone's pain because it seemed inconvenient, exaggerated, or uncomfortable, this story asks you to pause, to listen more closely, to question appearances. Because sometimes, the truth is not loud. Sometimes, it whispers from the attic. As we come to the true end of this audiobook-style journey, take a moment to reflect, not just on the story, but on your own life. Where might you be ignoring patterns? Where might you be silencing your instincts? Where might you be underestimating your strength? Stories like The Housemaid are powerful because they don't just entertain us. They train us. They sharpen our perception. They remind us that understanding human behavior is one of the most valuable survival skills we can develop. If this narration kept you engaged, moved you emotionally, or made you see things differently, support the universe of book by liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and sharing your thoughts in the comments. Tell us what moments stayed with you the most. Tell us what realization hit hardest. Because when stories like this are shared, discussed, and understood, it becomes harder for manipulation to hide in plain sight. Thank you for staying until the end. And remember, some doors are locked to protect you. Others are locked to control you. Knowing the difference can change your life.